I'm Sarah from Early to Bed, and I'm here today to talk to you about porn. Specifically, I want to talk about movies that are designed for heterosexually oriented people who want something that's a little bit more woman-friendly than perhaps traditional porn is. It's kind of hard to wade through all the movies out there knowing if you're going to find something that doesn't exploit women and that doesn't appear to be as misogynistic as a lot of the movies out there. At Early to Bed, we do sell and rent a lot of movies, and what we try to look for are films that celebrate women's sexuality and put women in a position of being in power in porn, so they're not always necessarily sex objects, and that they're treated well. A great place to start with porn that is designed specifically with a woman's view in mind are movies by Candida Royalle. She's been making movies for quite a while now, and she was one of the first women directors to really get in there and say, you know, women want to see hot porn, but they'd like to see something that's maybe a little different than what's currently out there. There's a lot more full body shots, there's a lot fewer cum on people's faces, and it's showing porn as more of a connection, or sex, as more of a connection between two people as opposed to something that kind of happens to somebody. This one is The Gift. It's a little bit old. It doesn't have the best fashion if you're comparing it to current trends. But that said, I think it's a really cute story, and I really like that it's not the most traditional bodies. There's some women in there who are like a little bit on the older side for porn. Certainly not, you know, aged. And it has a story about a magic blanket that makes people fuck, which I think is just funny, and I think it's a cute story. Candida Royalle also has another one called Aphrodite Superstar, which is one of the few movies in this genre that actually features a cast of color. It's hard to find folks of color in what we think of as woman-friendly, woman-produced porn. So Aphrodite Superstar is another great one if you're looking for a more varied cast. I also often recommend from the Candida Royalle's movies Stud Hunters. This is a little bit newer. It's kind of a cute tale about two women who are looking for the perfect man for a movie they're making, and it has a lot of great women-friendly sex scenes, and it has a scene at the end that actually has a woman being serviced, shall we say, by a bunch of guys, and it is the only time in porn I've seen a woman have an orgasm without any of the guys having an orgasm, which I just think is a nice kind of twist on what you often see in porn movies. So Stud Hunters by Candida Royalle is another good choice if you're just getting into hetero porn. If you want something that's maybe a little more modern, a little more polished, Playgirl videos, they've been coming out for a few years now, and these are definitely designed for the couples market, although you don't have to be in a couple to watch them. But the men are very attractive, the women are very attractive, the sex is pretty standard porn sex. It's not anything that crazy or creative, but it's put in the idea that there's some storylines, or at the very least, it's women in a position of not being degraded as the porn is shot. And they're well produced, and they look really nice. So the Playgirl series, this one is Behind Closed Doors, which is one of the more popular ones we sell at the store, but there's a lot in this series. Then there is Impulse Studios, that's been making a line of porn too that's aimed at women and men who want to see attractive heterosexual couples having nice chemistry-laden sex. So this is called Velvet Thrust, and again, it's got a good big budget look to it. It's very heterosexually oriented. There's a little bit of group action, but for the most part, it's just couples enjoying each other's bodies. And this is called Velvet Thrust, and there's a bunch in this series that have different titles that all sort of are velvety or thrusty or something. But maybe you just want to see some hot sex and you don't want a stinking storyline or anything. Tristan Taormino, who we've loved for years, she's best known, I think, at this point for writing the book, The Ultimate Guide to Anal Sex for Women, which is very popular, and there's movies that go with that too. She did what she was called an experiment in porn a couple years ago, and there's a series now called Chemistry. And what she did is she put a bunch of porn stars who work in the mainstream porn industry in a house together, I think for a weekend or whatever, and she let them just have any kind of sex they wanted to with each other. So all the sex in here, it's interesting because it's definitely, these are porn stars, there's a lot of the sex looks like porn sex, but everyone who's having sex supposedly chose to have sex with that person, the configurations that they're having are what they chose to do, so it's not as heavily directed as a lot of heterosexual porn. It's a little bit more intense than some of the lighter ones that I talked about already, but if you're looking for sex that's just what they call gonzo, there's no real storyline to it, but you want something that you know has been produced in kind of a more positive way, the Chemistry series are a really great way to go with that. Then there's a couple smaller companies that make what we call independent heterosexual porn. And by independent, I just mean they're not part of the big studio conglomerate sort of West Coast thing. In fact, there was a great company in Chicago called Libido that we really love, and they've made some of our favorite independent movies. This one is called Urban Friction, and this one is very Chicago. If you are from Chicago, it looks a lot like Chicago. It's got real people in it, so the bodies, while they're totally hot, they're not necessarily your fake boobed, totally shaved kind of porn star look to them. Everybody's attractive. There's tattoos. There is some woman-on-woman action, but for the most part, it's straight porn. And it has a little bit of a lower budget feel to it, to be perfectly honest. They don't have the bucks behind it that some of the big studios do, but it feels very genuine. The sex between the couples feels very that there's chemistry between them. It feels genuine. It takes a lot of appreciation for women's pleasure. I'm a big fan of Libido movies. If you can find them, you can find them at Early to Bed. You can find them all over, but there's Urban Friction is probably my favorite one of the ones that they make. Very ethically produced, too. Something good to know about porn. Then there's a line of movies from Comstock Films. This one is Matt and Kim. There's a couple other ones in this series. And this is an interesting series because it's basically a couple, and they have sex, and in between having sex, they talk about their sex life. So it's more of a documentary style, so if you're really interested in kind of not only seeing people go at it, but kind of knowing about their lives a little bit more, it's an interesting one to look at. And they have some straight couples, they have a lesbian couple, a gay male couple, they have an older couple, so you can kind of get a wide range of different couples who have sex in their own individual ways. So this one's called Matt and Kim, and these are by Comstock Films. Another sort of genre that a lot of people who are new to porn get interested in is classic porn, stuff from the golden age when it was shot on film in the late 70s and 80s. And these movies, while they have a lot of the standard porn things going on in them, one, they tend to be shot before the time when plastic surgery and having all your pubic hair shaved off was really standard, so you'll see more bodies with hair, bodies with natural breasts, bodies that maybe aren't quite as toned and hard as you see nowadays. The men tend to be a little less polished, which could be totally hot if that's what you're looking for. And they tend to have a really good sense of humor about themselves. So these movies, what we think of as classic porn, they're movies. They have a storyline. The storyline's usually pretty silly. The acting is usually, not that great, but they're fun to watch, which is really nice. And because these came out before the internet and before porn started getting more and more and more and more kind of hardcore and aggressive, these tend to be, while they're not the most feminist movies, they tend to have pretty good interpersonal relationships in them for the most part. This one I particularly love. It's called Hot Rackets. It's about a country club where everybody plays tennis and then has sex. But there's a lot of naked tennis playing, which is good or bad depending on how you look at it. But it's a charming movie. It actually has Candida Royalle in it, who went on to produce the Femme movies, which is interesting to see her actually working in the movies and then what she did as a producer and a director. But most of this movie, there's Debbie Does Dallas, the opening of Misty Beethoven, Hot Rackets, 8 to 4, things like that. You can usually look for them in a classics section somewhere, and then you can find ones that are a little bit more campy than a lot of what's out there now. For more information on these movies and other movies that we've curated into our collection, you can visit us online at earlytobed.com or check out our store in Chicago at 5232 North Sheridan Road. If you ever have questions about porn or sex toys, feel free to email us at info@earlytobed.com. Thank you for watching Early to Bed TV.